Hey guys, Magnetico here, and welcome to the series of videos where we take video game systems, we clean them up, repair them if need be, and sometimes we even mod them. And today we're going to be taking a look at another system that is very dear to my heart, and that is the Nintendo 64. Now, I know I posted a video, or a short I should say, on YouTube and TikTok about me receiving a N64 system. They came included with the controller, the power brick, basically everything you needed, and it worked beautifully. It was a great system. I bought it off eBay and it was region free, which means somebody had already opened it, installed a little plastic mod on this so it can take both Japanese and North American cartridges, which is great. But it took something away from us, like a rush, you know, of cleaning it up and making and being like the first to go ahead and dive into the system firsthand and cleaning it up for the first time. So what I ended up doing was going on eBay, and there was a seller that was selling a Nintendo 64, which is this one, with just the power brick, no controller, no AV cable, and it was untested. The guy couldn't test it because he didn't have the AV cable. So we don't know how much we can trust those guys on eBay. However, this seller was incredibly helpful. He sent messages every step of the way saying, hey, this has been I'm about to package this up. He said, I'm about to send this up. And then sure enough, I got the tracking number. So I felt at ease with this, that he was telling the truth. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and plug this in to see if it even works. But if this is your kind of thing, guys, where somebody goes through these systems, opens them up, cleans them, repairs them, mods them, and even messes with the controller, so you guys can have guides on controllers as well, make sure you hit that subscribe button. That way you're notified every time I post one of these videos. And let's go ahead and get started. All right, so it looks like the system gets power. Let's go ahead and check the screen.
It's me, Mario! Hello!
So it looks like we have a working system. I went ahead and played some more Mario 64 and gathered a couple of stars, and I didn't notice any audio issues or any graphics glitches. So it looks like we have a working system, thankfully. Now, one of the things I wanted to talk about before we get started with the cleanup, which I consider very important at this point, is that I already have a roadmap for how many videos I'm going to make, and one of those videos is going to be a mod for the Nintendo 64, and this mod will allow it to output into component or RGB SCART, because right now the only thing the N64 can do, any version of the N64, is AV only. So I want better video quality. If you care about that kind of stuff, I will make a video on modding the system. Now, there are two kinds of mods because there are several versions of the N64. There's what they call an advanced mod, which requires soldering skills. Well, they both do, but it requires more soldering skills, more wires, a little bit more skill. And that is for the later versions of the N64. If you want a much simpler solution, then I would consider getting an earlier version of the N64. And the way to tell is if you go ahead and get your N64 or start searching for it on eBay, you're looking at the serial number. So this is the one I got off eBay that was region free. And what it is, most of the time, it's just a Japanese version that was modded to play both Japanese and North American cartridges. But if you do happen to stumble upon region free, you're looking at the serial number. If they don't have a picture of it, maybe ask the seller, hey, what's the serial number? But you're looking for anything that ends with, or starts with, I should say, NUJ1. That is for the simple mod. NUJ2 will require the more advanced mod. So it's just something that I recommend. If you guys are looking for the North American N64, which is kind of what I was looking for, and you can tell because it's English at the bottom as opposed to Japanese, you're looking for NS1. If you get an NS2, you'll require the more advanced mod. So if it's just for video output, or what I'm trying to change is the video output so it can support better resolutions, I will opt just to go for the easy mod on this one. The advanced mod, the advantages of it is that it does have its own little like built-in menu, so you can kind of add scan lines, upscale it a little bit. But since I already use a RetroSync 5X, I don't feel like that's something that I will be looking for, but it depends on what you guys are looking for. Maybe you guys don't care about the RetroSync 5X or just want an internal solution. That's up to you guys completely. But for my purposes and the videos that I'll be making, I am looking for the NS1 or NUJ1 to make the simpler mod work on these systems. let's get started with that cleaning. So what you'll need is the N64 you're going to be working on, the tools, and I'll go ahead and link these items in the description below, but this tool set will have what you need to open up the N64: isopropyl alcohol, 99%, and then some Q-tips for cleaning and a toothbrush for cleaning. So here's the N64. This expansion memory card door, we're going to go ahead and take that out. And the actual expansion memory card, we're going to go ahead and take out with this tool here. Don't try to use anything too pointy. You don't want to damage it. Make sure you pull it up slowly so that sticker stays in place. If you still have that sticker on it, put that aside. And you can see it's kind of gunky in there, so definitely going to have to clean this guy up. You flip it over, you'll see this door that we can take out as well. And as you can see here, I am dealing with the NS1 version of the Nintendo 64 for modding later on. There's going to be 6 screws at the bottom, 4 in each corner, and then 2 in the middle sides as well. Once you take off these 2 screws where the little feet are, you can actually take those little feet off. Go ahead and place that aside. And I actually forgot to take off this screw here, so let's go ahead and take this one out. These are all specialty Nintendo screws, so with that set that I have in the description below, you should have all the tools you need to go ahead and open up this N64. All right, let's go ahead and flip it over, and we should be able to lift the top pretty easily. And here it is. I'm gonna go ahead and put this top to the side for now, but yeah, you can see it's pretty dusty in there. It's pretty... I expected it to look worse, but there's all these screws. That's what Nintendo's known for. Lots of screws on their system. So we're gonna go ahead and work with the perimeter ones first on the outsides. Put those to the side, and then we're gonna work on these 2 that have this like little gear. Go ahead and separate all these screws so that way you don't lose where they're at, and then start working on these other screws here. There should be 2 black ones here we can take off. Again, separate them so you don't lose them. And there should be these 2 where the hole for the heatsink are as well. And then change your bit to a smaller one for these tiny screws as well. And then we're going to take care of these last 4 at the top. One for the power and then one for the AV. But yeah, that should be all of them. Lots of screws. Now we can go ahead and slide the heatsink out. And as you can see, it's very dusty, very dirty. Again, I expected worse, but it still needs a good clean. And we're going to go ahead and take off this motherboard from the system, from the bottom of the system here. Once you lift it up, this piece of plastic should come off. Go ahead and set that aside. For now, we're not going to really worry about the motherboard too much, but it is tiny. It is a lot smaller than I expected it to be. Let's focus on the bottom. Again, very dusty, but we're going to take out these metal pieces out here. This one was giving me a little bit of issues, but with a little bit of force, not too much, I was able to pull it out. And then finally, this little plastic piece here for the light that shows you that you have power to the N64. Put that to the side. So now here's the motherboard, very tiny. Let's focus on the top of the system first before we move towards it. There's going to be 2 screws holding this piece of plastic for the cartridges. Go ahead and take both of those out. Again, as you can see at the top of the screen, I'm keeping all my screws separate. Go ahead and take this out. It's going to need a little bit of a clean. You're going to press both of these little sides here so you can take out the reset button. Go ahead and push it in. It actually gave me a little bit of trouble, and also as I flipped it over, the 2 plastic pieces for the cartridges kind of fell out. So that's totally okay. Put those to the side for now. And as I was wrestling with this reset button, finally, I was able to kind of press the sides in a little bit and then just kind of pull it out. We're going to do the same with the power button. This one's not as difficult, but same thing. Press the sides in and then push the button all the way out. As you can see, it's filthy. So is the top. So we're going to start working on these immediately, the plastic pieces. So now that we completely disassembled the system, we can go ahead and take all those plastic pieces and then take them to a bathtub or a sink, fill it up with warm water, add a little bit of soap in there, and we can go ahead and put those pieces in there. What I like to do is use the sink only because I do have a pretty deep sink, and I put the bigger pieces in there. And in a separate little bowl, I'll go ahead and take some of that warm soapy water and put the smaller pieces inside of there. Let that soak for a while, maybe 20 minutes or so. In the meantime, you can either continue with the disassembly or take a small break. What I would do personally is I would let it soak for about 15-20 minutes, take a break, and then once it's done soaking, go ahead and leave those pieces out so they can air dry over time. Another option is you can go ahead and clean them and brush them while they're in the water as well. It's up to you which way you want to go, but what I do recommend is taking care of those pieces and then letting them air dry, because for them to dry they do take a while. So while you're waiting on that to dry, you can continue on with the rest of the disassembly and the cleanup as well. So now we have the motherboard here, and it is protected by two metal shields, one at the top and one at the bottom. And the bottom one is rather easy to pull off. Just go ahead and make sure it fits through that little cartridge slot there, and go ahead and put that aside. And when we flip this system over, we can start working on the top one. Not too difficult, just takes a little bit of wiggling around. You'll see all these metal pieces kind of coming off like this. You can go ahead and put this to the side. Make sure you don't lose them. They're very delicate, easy to bend, so I would just be careful with these. And of course, the top shield is incredibly sturdy. So let's put all of this aside. Now that we have the motherboard itself exposed, we can kind of take a look at it. It is pretty dusty from the top, but the bottom looks pristine. So this is kind of nice. So let's go ahead and zoom in. And you'll see these thermal blocks here that we can kind of twist off. They all have thermal pads at the bottom. That one has dust on it, so it definitely needs a cleaning. And I would recommend playing the system for a few minutes so you can warm up the chips and you can kind of easily twist off these thermal blocks. Otherwise, if they're completely cold, you might damage the thermal pad, and you don't want to do that. I'm probably going to replace them anyway, just fair warning if you guys are not planning on replacing it. And then we'll take the toothbrush and some isopropyl alcohol and clean the entire board. And this is completely optional, but the cartridge feeder actually comes out without you having to unscrew anything. You just kind of have to wiggle it from side to side. It might take a little bit of force, but just be careful. But as you can see, there's a bunch of pins that were holding it together. But more importantly, the bottom of it, look how dirty this is. I don't know if it's flux or if it's just like something leaking. I couldn't tell, but I'm definitely gonna have to clean that up with a Q-tip. So do the rest of the cleaning with a Q-tip at the top, and we'll go ahead and start cleaning this particular cartridge reader. Make sure you get the inside as well with some isopropyl alcohol, but more importantly, just make sure those pins remain straight. If you bend them, make sure that you straighten them back up, otherwise it will not fit. To put it back together, make sure this arrow is matching. And that's how you put it back on later on. Let's flip this over, and now we can go ahead and clean the bottom of the system. Mine didn't require too much cleaning, but I'm definitely going to do a once over. And then I'm going to clean the thermal blocks and the thermal pads as well with the Q-tip and a tiny bit of isopropyl alcohol. You just want to get the dust off. And make sure when you put these back on, you line them on perfectly. I'll explain later, but it's just a pain in the butt when you're screwing this back on. So just make sure you line them up the way they're supposed to be. And that's it. We're done with the motherboard for now. We're going to start working on the metal shieldings here. I'm going to take a napkin and some isopropyl alcohol and just start cleaning this. Those scuffs that you see on there already, they're most likely going to be permanent at this point. So just do your best to clean off all the dust that you can. Make sure you clean all the crevices as much as possible. Just make sure everything is nice and clean. Now, speaking of crevices here, I used a toothbrush to get this part right here. This is kind of hard to reach with anything else. So the toothbrush definitely takes care of that particular issue. And then next up, we'll clean the bottom of it. Thankfully, this one is more flat than the other one. You can just take, isopropyl alcohol in the napkin and just go ham on this. Again, those scuffs, most likely permanent at this point. I don't know how to clean those up. But next and lastly, we'll take care of the actual heatsink. And this thing was the dustiest part out of the system here. So here I am wiping it down with a napkin and the isopropyl alcohol. Go ahead and flip it over and clean the bottom. You probably already noticed, but look how dusty this was. We'll take the small metal pieces that we were talking about earlier, including these guys here. I'm going to take the toothbrush, go ahead and clean it up a little bit. Don't go too hard on those. But before I continue, I'm just going to do a quick clean on my pad here. It was completely filthy. I didn't want to, any of that dust to get back on the system. We're going to take this cartridge door, clean it up. As you probably noticed, I didn't throw this into any water just because of that metal spring. But you can definitely clean that spring pretty easily just by using the brush. Okay, once we're done with this, the last piece of the puzzle here is the PSU, or the power supply. So 2 screws on the shell here, take those off. It is a little bit difficult to take off. You just kind of have to snap it out like this. And you probably will notice that it probably has an adhesive on the actual power supply, so you won't be able to take it off from its shell. So just clean the top as best as possible with some isopropyl alcohol. Don't force it. I know there's some that are not attached, so you can go ahead and clean it at your leisure. But if it is attached and you have trouble taking it out, don't force it in any way. I'm just cleaning up the shell here as best as possible with a toothbrush and a tiny bit of isopropyl alcohol. And any dust left over, I'll just clean with this microfiber cloth here. Just make sure everything is nice and clean. And then I'll go ahead and snap the shell back together here. You might have to force it, especially at the connection spot on the other side. I'll show you here in a second. Just go ahead and snap it back on. Once it's snapped back on, you can go ahead and put the screws back into the shell, and that should conclude our power supply. For the cord for the power supply, I like cleaning those. You guys don't have to, this is optional, but I'll take a napkin and some isopropyl alcohol and I'll pinch the cord between the napkin here. Then I'll just feed the wire all the way through until the very end. Look how filthy this is. Then I'll clean the plug a little bit. Not, you know, obviously don't put too much liquid on your toothbrush when you're cleaning this up. And that's it. We're done with the cleaning process. So I'm going to start with the bottom shell of the N64, and I'm going to take these metal pieces and just put them back into place here. And I did one more cleanup of all the plastic pieces before I continued. You guys should do the same until you're completely happy with the way it turned out. And we're going to take this clear plastic piece and we're going to place it back into place. That way we know whether or not the N64 is powered on. And we're going to take this metal shielding here and just line up everything perfectly fine with all the holes. Make sure the pillars go through the actual shielding, as you can see here. And we're going to go ahead and take the motherboard and place it on top. And I like starting with the power area and just letting everything else fall into place. And as you can see, I already added the cartridge reader back on, so don't forget to do that before we continue. I'm going to take the top metal shielding and I'm going to place it on top, let it fall into place. I was pressing down more than I should have here just because it wasn't like completely snug, but once you screw everything down, it should be perfectly fine. This is just a case of me doubting myself at this point. As you can see, I'm just kind of like making sure everything was good. I'm going to go ahead and turn the system around and we're going to take a look at the AV port, and we're going to take this piece of plastic right here, and it's like a little rectangle with a notch at the top. Make sure the notch is facing up, lift the motherboard and place the plastic piece into the AV port like so. Once you get it lined up just right, everything should fall into place, as you can see here, and we are good to go. We can go ahead and turn the system back around. If you guys remember, I mentioned that I set all my screws separately. That way I don't lose which ones go where. So you can use this video for reference. I'm going to screw down the power area and also the AV area. And here I'm just making sure everything was lined up still, because we're going to take these very delicate metal pieces here and we're going to place them into the top shielding here. Again, follow this video for reference on how to put it back on. This one, you kind of have to push down into the little crevice there. And this little plastic piece right here, this is all for the expansion port. You kind of just have to let it fall into place like so. Make sure the holes are lined up by the red light. Again, don't force it, because again, these are delicate pieces, but it should look something like this. So we're going to go ahead and take this heatsink and slide it back into place. If you guys remember earlier, I told you guys to make sure you put those heat blocks on top of the chips perfectly on top and make sure they're all lined up. That's because this heatsink actually screws into those blocks as well. So what I like to do is take a screw and put it in each corner of the heat block here, and don't tighten it down all the way, especially if you just removed it and cleaned them, because if you tighten it too much, they might actually spin in place, and then you'll have to remove the heatsink and then the top shielding so you can go ahead and readjust. So go ahead and hit each corner, and then hit the opposite corner of each block as well, so that way you have them locked down. Now, if you look through the holes and that screw is just being stubborn and it doesn't want to go down, just take a peek in there. If you see something shiny, that means the heat block moved, and you don't want to actually damage those either, because that's what keeps your system cool. So as you can see, one more time, I'm hitting the corners, and then I'm hitting the opposite corner, and then I'll go ahead and put in the rest of the screws. And once I have all the screws in there, that's when I start the tightening process. Now that we have all the screws back into place, I'm going to go ahead and tighten the rest of the screws. As you can see, everything fits perfectly. I'm going to take these screws with the little gears and put them back into place. Then I'll take these long screws and screw them. Remember to change your bit to a smaller one for these. You don't want to strip them. And then we're going to put the black screws back on here as well. Everything looks good so far. We're going to take the longer of the perimeter screws and put those back on. And then the other perimeter screws, just go ahead and put them all the way around. There looks like there should be one on the left of the light there, but there isn't. There's only one screw that goes here. Now we got that all done. Let's go ahead and get this out of the way and start working on the top shell here. And we're going to take these cartridge doors, and as you can see, there's little springs and there's a little spring arm. The spring arm definitely has a place to go. It should be these little slots that kind of like align the plastic here. And then the sides of the door go perfectly into these other slots as well. So as you can see, I'm going to try to fit this into these slots on the sides, and as you can see, the spring arm, it goes in that little like two parallel slots that are kind of outlined on the plastic itself. They tend to move around if you kind of shake the plastic around a little bit, or shake the shell. Even when you try to put this on here, you see how easily they move. So try to put them into place. And then this little plastic cartridge area, there's a little square cutout area where that little pillar plastic should go, as you can see here. So keep that in mind. I wasn't really paying attention to that, but I'm going to hold everything into place, flip it over, and make sure the doors have the resistance that they need. And it looks like everything is working fine. So now that we have those, we can go ahead and screw the whole thing down back together. We're going to flip the top shell over, and we're going to start working on the power and the reset button. So I'm going to take the power button and put it into place. Just go ahead and put it in there. Pretty easy. Test it out, make sure it works. Same thing with the reset button. Make sure it's oriented correctly and put it back in its little slot here. So everything from the top shell looks good. Everything is well put together. It's nice and clean as well. So let's go ahead and put this at the top here. So let's take the bottom shell once more. And we're going to take the top shell, and we're going to go ahead and just place it on top, and it should slide right in with no problems. There we go. I might go ahead and test out this power button here in just a second. I'm making sure everything is looking flush. Everything's looking good. Power button looks like it's working fine. It was a little out of place there, but I fixed it just by wobbling it around. So now we can go ahead and flip this over and kind of put this together here. I'm going to put the two screws in the back in first, and then one on the middle here and one at the top. The reason I didn't do the bottom corners yet is because we have to put those little feet back together. If you guys remember, we took those out. It was one of the first things we took off from the system. So I'm going to take the little feet, I'm going to put them into place and spin it around a little bit until it kind of locks into place. As you can see here, they don't move around. That's when you know you can go ahead and put those screws back together as well. Next, we're going to take this last door, which is the extension door. Put that back into place, and that should be it for the bottom of the N64. So one more piece to the puzzle here. It's going to be the actual expansion port here. So let's go ahead and put this back in here. Kind of fold the plastic like it was before, or the sticker, I should say, and then put the expansion door back on. Give the system one final wipe before we finish. And there we go. We're done. So I'm really happy with the way this N64 turned out. Again, this was an untested N64 that I got off eBay. So I took a chance on it, but it worked as soon as I got it. So that was really cool. So there was nothing in the system that I noticed that would causes any issues in the foreseeable future. There was no corroding of any sort, just a little bit of dust that we went in there and cleaned off, and I think the system turned out great. In the future, the only thing I really want to do is just replace those thermal pads, and only because I noticed that the thermal pads that are on this system don't cover the chip completely. So I want to get and cut out some new thermal pads so we can completely cover those chips and make sure it gets the best cooling possible in the future. So I'm really excited about that. I'm thinking the next video I'm going to make, however, is going to be the video one, and I want to go ahead and add the chip, which lets us actually output in either SCART or component as well. So right now AV is doing the trick, but I can get better video. I know this. It just takes a little bit of soldering on our part here. So if this is your kind of thing where somebody goes through and cleans up systems, repairs them if need be, or even mods them, make sure you hit that subscribe button. That way you're notified every time I post one of these videos. So until next time, I'll see you guys. Bye bye.